Please pronounce your name correctly for me.
Yes, it is Rhonda Bellamy. I am the founding executive director of the Arts Council of Wilmington and New Hanover County.
Now, one of the first things I always wonder about creative people and people that get into the creative fields is, of course, how did they even get to it? So, like childhood, were your parents creative? Was it some schooling? Like, what brought you to this field?
I was always interested in the arts. My parents, who were both born and raised in Wilmington, actually met and married in New York City, where we were all born and raised. And so when I was in high school, they decided that they wanted to move back to Wilmington. It was a very traumatic experience for me. I mean, can you imagine being a teenager, from New York City, going, using mass transit, going to museums and libraries on your own, and then being plopped down in Wilmington in the late 1970s. And so it was such a traumatic experience for me that I kept running away, skipping school, those types of things. And my mother, knowing my interest in the arts, decided that me, out of the 5 children that they had, needed a little something more. And so whenever she could get tickets to take me to a performance, she would take me, because she knew that that was where my passion was. And so the very first play that she took me to was Sam Art Williams, Pender County native, who won a Tony nomination for Home, a play that was based in a small town like Burgaw, which is where he was from. And he would go on to, of course, executive produce Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and many of the In Living Color and many of the sitcoms that came, in the early 90s or so. That experience really kind of turned it around for me. I realized that I was not hurting anyone but myself by skipping school and running away from home. But it was because my mother understood that that was my passion, and she was trying to, find a way to bring me back around, that cemented my love of the arts, if you will.
Now, you have been a performer, and you've also done radio. So you've had a sort of a long career in and around performing arts as well as the visual arts.
Yes. Well, actually, my day job for 22 years was as news director for a cluster of stations here in
TV stations, right?
No, radio stations.
Radio stations,
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So 22 years as a news director, most recently for the Cumulus 5-station cluster. I also hosted a daily talk show on politics and current events on our news talk station. So that was really where I was at. But I always loved the arts. And so in 1998, at my birthday party, actually, we were, having a good time, me and lots of friends, Grinaldo Frazier, the late Grinaldo Frazier, Alicia Alexander, and a few others were at my house. And we said, why don't we kind of put together an organization, an umbrella organization, to start grooming talent? And the Black Arts Alliance was born. And several years after that, I founded the North Carolina Black Film Festival, which is getting ready to celebrate its 17th year. So that's how we got into it. Interestingly enough, the Sam Art Williams that I referenced earlier, he cast me as the lead in his play, The Dance on Widow's Row, and directed me in it. And so that was just a thrill.
Full circle, too.
Coming full circle from this, dropout in high school whose mother was able to, get 2 tickets for us to go to this man directing me in something. It was something else. I mean, really, coming full circle.
Okay, so now I'm interested a lot in the Black Arts Alliance and Black Film Festival and all this kind of stuff, because I'm going to come off as a complete ass and a complete idiot. I'm a white man who was raised in Northern Virginia, Washington, D.C. area, and generally raised in what I would define as a pretty racist area. Generally, I know I'm going to get in trouble for this, but whatever. And then moved to Wilmington at one point. And Wilmington has also got a long racial history with all kinds of problems from
1898.
1898. Mm-hmm. Race riots. What's the word they're using these days?
Massacre.
Massacre. Okay.
Uh-huh.
The last time I was here, it was race riots. So now it's massacre. I totally agree with all of these statements. So when you decided to create the Black Arts Alliance, what were you trying to achieve with that?
So we wanted a platform for African Americans to become engaged in the arts community here. We even at that point in 1998, we realized we've got a lot going on here. But you could go to the galleries, you could go to the theaters, you can go to dance performances, and you would never see African Americans there. And so it was really important to us to begin telling our stories and expressing ourselves in various forms, and we knew that unless you had some sort of structure for ensuring that there would be exposure to the arts, you can't have appreciation of the arts until you have exposure to the arts.
Now, okay, wait, one little thing, little nuanced thing. It was called Black Arts Alliance, Black Film Festival, but you just said African American. I'm a white man. I'm always personally very scared of what's the right word for me to be using.
Yeah.
Please school me on that.
I use them interchangeably.
Okay.
I really do. Black is probably the word that many people use because it is the opposite of white. So when you say, African American, my grandchildren, one is Filipino, one is Jamaican. They don't really know or sense any connection to Africa.
Right.
So, but in the United States, we use these words interchangeably.
Like I'm in Europe, and they don't say, of course, African European or anything. They just say black,
right?
Or African specifically, because that's generally where they're from. So, I've been away for a while, so I just sort of want to make sure I'm using the right terms.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Don't want to offend anybody.
No, great question.
Okay, so the Black Arts Alliance. So you created it. And that's when I first met you, actually, years ago, when it was out of the Cameron Art Museum. It was and the Black Arts Alliance event, and I'm just sort of fascinated. So you founded it in 1998. What's changed? Has anything gotten better?
Yes.
Or worse?
I think things have gotten better. If you go to any of the Black Arts Alliance events, and mind you, I will say that when I accepted the position of executive director, I stepped off of all boards.
I remember that.
Including the ones that I founded, Cameron Art Museum and a few others. So I'm not as involved with them, but I do go to performances. In fact, I sat in on their virtual board meeting the other day because they're going to do a drive-in festival because of COVID. Let me put it that way. When you go to these events that they sponsor, including a poetry jam, which has really helped to get the word out and to get people out to events, because Wilmington is it's an interesting place in terms of people who engage and where they engage and how they engage. And so prior to this time, these are people, I didn't even see them in the grocery store. I mean, I was like, well, who knew? We would have something out at Keenan Auditorium, which is 1,000 seats, packed out. So where did these people come from? They were groomed. They found something that resonated with them, that spoke to their culture and their beliefs, and they started coming out. And had that not, the Black Arts Alliance and the Film Festival and those not been in place, then what would they have done? Where would they be? They'd be going back out, into their little holes where they had apparently been before. So I'm really very, very grateful for what we were able to come up with and to see it grow, for sure.
Have there been any sort of dramatic? Keep in mind, of course, I've been in Europe for the past, let's say, the 6 months since this massive sort of racial uprising has come up again. Which this is the thing, is like everybody's like, oh, there's a racial uprising. I'm like, no, it's a racial uprising again. Like this has come on in the 60s, in the 80s. I mean, this is continually going on because, well, there is no justice for all of this stuff. There is no equality. There is none of the. Everybody talks a big talk, but they don't walk a big walk in the end. So it's sort of like, how does that affect the arts? Because I still feel like there's certain aspects of the arts are still very segregated. Like particularly, I'd say visual arts is still pretty segregated. Performing arts, less so, and music, of course, the least. Very much sort of blended pretty well in music. But the visual arts is still, I feel, pretty elitist, snobby, white old men.
Well, actually, so
I
the art
set
that we
you
have
up
in the
enough?
windows, the art we have in the windows is from an African American artist who's here. It's interesting that you say that, and I'll have to respond in a number of different ways.
Go ahead.
First of all, I will say that, as a result of this belated racial reckoning, I'm being approached by a lot of corporate entities who all of a sudden want murals, they want signage, they want African American artists to do this. And I have to be very frank with them. If you have not invested in early childhood education, arts education, if you've not advocated for that in our public schools, then you can't expect somebody to turn 18 and all of a sudden be a muralist. It just is not going to happen. That's why you have to take those steps to expose people so that they appreciate it, and hopefully some of them will adopt it and become pretty good at it.
Yeah, from a young age.
From a young age.
Yeah.
But you can't just all of a sudden expect to have muralists and you've not really seeded muralists.
But also, doesn't that, like, from my perspective, doesn't that sort of feel just like a token gesture? Like, hey, we're not actually going to change any of our policies about racism, but and the arts, but we're going to just put up this mural by a minority artist.
Well, no, in the cases that I spoke of.
Because it's not a longevity. I mean, it's not about supporting them throughout their career. It's about just like, hey, there's problems with racism right now. Let's put up one mural to just appease people. And then they'll forget about it 3 years later. And that artist then will not have no support in 3 years. So to me, it's about longevity of support, not like individual elements.
Yeah. At least in the instance that I'm talking about, they are talking about putting up 8 murals. So if I can't find one muralist, I definitely can't find 8 muralists, 8 black muralists in town. So we will likely have to import.
I was going to say there aren't 8 in Wilmington.
No.
I can think of 2 or 3.
3.
Yeah, I was going to say
3
2 or
is what
3,
I came up with. So, of course, I'm the one that will say just what I feel. And in these meetings, I tell them, let's be careful that we are not reacting and not responding. Mm-hmm. So there is a difference. And I said, at the risk of, we risk looking gimmicky if it's just to throw a mural up and not train an inward lens on what we're doing and how we're contributing to this situation. And so the large corporations that I'm speaking of are doing the same thing. They're looking, what does our staff look like?
Right. That's my point, is like the idea of like just hiring a muralist to come in and paint a mural. That's a gesture, but it's not an actual like systemic change to how, let's keep it to the arts, how they support the arts,
Mm-hmm.
So they may put up this mural this year, but next year they're going to support a traditional white artist again, if things don't change systemically. Mm-hmm. So like, that's my thing, is like, I feel like there's too much of the sort of one-time support, but not lifetime support. And when it comes to the arts, artists want, well, as a general, and I guess I'm speaking for myself, we want longevity of support instead of just like a one-time gesture. Mm-hmm. Even when it comes to like selling art, I'd rather sell 100 pieces for $10 than one piece for $10,000 kind of thing. Like, I want more people to appreciate it. I want support for a longer period of time with a larger collector base, that kind of an idea. So what can be done to sort of assist in sort of this better breadth of systemic change of support instead of just gestural support?
Is to have someone like me at the table who is going to point it out every time. This is gimmicky. This is not systemic change. This doesn't move the needle for anybody. And so I'm very, very clear on that. You spoke about 1898. So I was the co-executive secretary of the Centennial Foundation, and we are the ones that put the park up.
I love that monument.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so it was our mission to, to honor the memory and to help to heal the wounds and things. So this is something that takes place over a period of time. There's an arc there. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
There's an arc that, so we can't just hit it at this point and think, okay, done. We've done what we're supposed to do. You have to continue, and you have to, as part of your master planning for whatever organization or business that you're with, look at this 5 years out, 10 years out. What does success look like if we are really intent on changing the trajectory for blacks or anybody else for that matter? So it can't be, a hit it and quit it, a one and done. It has to be strategic and intentional.
Okay, so what can be done? So younger education, great, love that. I mean, but there should be generally more arts education, period.
Yeah.
That's not even a racial thing. That's just period.
For everyone.
Yeah.
For everyone. I'm also on the executive committee of Arts North Carolina, which is our statewide advocacy group, and am also chair of the Arts NC Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. And we just had our first meeting last Monday. And I'm telling you, we just had some wonderful conversations that came out of this notion of making the arts accessible for everyone. And one of them talked about flawed philanthropy and the fact that, especially here in our area, this is pretty much an arts desert. Other than an arts philanthropy desert, we have the Arts Council and we have the Landfall Foundation, which are the two biggies. But we don't have a lot of corporate funding for the arts in any big way.
Philanthropy. Mm-hmm. It's not something I hear much about. Like people, it's very much done behind closed doors. It's very much like, lawyers are sort of planning for it, and people are doing like legacy planning and estate planning and creating philanthropy ideas. Why is philanthropy such almost like to a certain extent outside of major metropolitan areas, a bit of a dirty word? Like people don't want to participate in philanthropy. They don't do it. They don't even think about it.
Yeah, if you take a look at the New Hanover County Community Foundation and you go down their list of who they represent, most of them have donor advised funds that are very specific. We want sports, we want soccer, we want, healthcare, we want juvenile diabetes. It's very, very, and, I'm a grandmother.
You look fabulous for a grandmother.
Thank you. And they range in age from 7 years to 14. And so my middle grandson, who passed away several years ago, he was born with some profound disabilities and wasn't expected to live past the day he was born, but he gave us 5 good years. And so when I think of philanthropy, I think of the Ronald McDonald House and the Make-A-Wish Foundation and some of those organizations that supported us during his life and death. And selling the arts is not that same emotional pull.
The arts is a luxury thing for the elite, and whereas something like helping at-risk children or whatever, like this is something everybody can relate to. Whereas art is a very separate thing and
subjective.
Oh God!
So I know of many people who, we love classical music. We'll never step our foot in a jazz hall.
It's funny. I love jazz. I won't go to classical.
Yeah. So it's so particular.
It is, and it yeah. I mean, God, and that's and then of course it's also somewhat like cultural in a way. I mean, like in Europe, like the figure in nudes is very common. In the United States, not so much. Like plein air painting is a certain genre of like France and England, but not of other countries. Like everything is like the subject matters are very subjective, and so it's very hard to just say I'm going to support art because people want to put criteria on this. Like I think back to like Mapplethorpe in DC and all this kind of crap. Like they want to support what they think their community would like, but they don't want to support anything that doesn't match with their own values.
That's right. They're very, very particular about giving. And, one of the points that was raised at this DEI meeting that I chaired the other day was that too often we've got to change that whole narrative. We keep going hat in hand, asking for support. Please, give us whatever meager dollars you have, and devaluing, which is something that I worry about, particularly in light of COVID, where we have really stepped it up. We have digitized everything, and I can watch Hamilton for nothing.
Yep, on Disney Plus.
Right. And so I do worry about the devaluing of the live arts experience, because it's going to be a while before we get back to full capacity. And unless you have full capacity, we've got to rework that whole financial paradigm.
Oh, the theatrical performances run on such a thin margin.
Anyway.
Like, yeah, I mean, before all this. So
That's right.
Now it's going to be ridiculous. I mean, it's so, the hat in hand thing you're saying, like one of the, I did nonprofit work for a while here in Wilmington. I got so burned out and tired of basically constantly begging, like as in the arts. So it's not even being an artist myself, but it's in the arts. We are constantly begging. Please, will you give us a little more money? Please, can we expand this thing? Please, can we, like, how can we try and shift it so like we don't have to be constantly begging? Because I feel like a lot of our emotional energy, our time, our concerns, our fears of like losing these support things, like ends up sucking away the things that could be very progressive and very forward thinking, because we're so worried about losing what little we already have.
Or sharing it.
Yeah, that's another issue completely. I mean, because there's so many different arts organizations, and they're also niche, and they're dividing what could be a good pot of money into like 10 different nonprofits that each get a little bit of money. How can we change that?
I don't know that I have the answer to that. How do you change that? What I've worked really hard at trying to do is to cement the economic benefit of the arts, because that's what a lot of people, unless they have some real passion for some discipline, when we're talking to government officials, whether they're on the local level or state level, they want to know about the economic return on investment, period. They don't care if you like, the color blue. They don't care, if you like Shakespeare or The Taming of the Shrew. They don't care about that. What they care about is a return on investment. And so we have to show them. And we've been pretty successful at that. This year, our appropriation from the county went from $10,000 to $45,000.
Wow, congratulations.
Yes. And that is because we went in and made the case. So the Arts Council, we were the local organizing partner for Americans for the Arts. And so we did the surveying that was part of the AEP-5, as it was called, the most comprehensive study of the economic impact of nonprofit arts organizations and their audiences. And the study is done every 5 years. And we were set to do it again in 2021. Of course, that's probably going to change, but what we knew from our research in 2015 was that our local arts nonprofits had $14.1 million in direct expenditures, and our audiences spent another $41 million, excluding the price of admission.
Wait, excluding? Wow. Okay. 'Cause I'm
Excluding
thinking
the price
ticket
of admission.
prices.
Right. Not
So
even the
that's not
ticket
ticket
prices. So we were able to show, because we went in and we went to individual performances, whether they were at the Wilson Center or Thalian Hall or dance performances, and gave surveys. Give us your zip code.
But wait, and that's just nonprofit
That's
places.
just
So
nonprofit.
that doesn't include the for-profit places
At all.
or art galleries.
Art
or
galleries,
anything like
most of which are for profit.
that. Right.
Doesn't include a lot. And so we know that the economic impact is minimally $100 million. But we were able to quantify this $55.8 million, which fortunately we had the city of Wilmington to help pay for the study. And this was a study that was paid for nationally by the National Association of Commissioners, the League of Municipalities. So we were able to go back and say, look, your groups are the ones that, they helped to fund this study. So don't just take it from us, take it from the groups that you're a part of.
I love finding statistics. Like the one thing that I used to run the pedestrian art program, which you all run. There's a public sculpture program for those people that don't know it. That and it was an uphill battle from day one, like because you're constantly. when you're talking about public art, you're talking about inclusion of like the public's opinions of art, but you're also talking about like return on investment. So like, when I went to Mayfair and I said, hey, put up this sculpture, the idea was if you put up this sculpture, it'll draw more people to see the sculpture, and then more people come to see the sculpture, then they might end up buying from the people in the retail stores. So but there's that data to be able to prove that is so hard to come by.
So what we did, and we've suspended it until our new installation, but we actually had an app. So if you go and you scan the signage, then you could have the artists talk about their process, and we were able to get some really good numbers on the back end. When people were seeing these, where they were coming from, based on the phone that they dialed in from the area code on their phone. And
it's a little Big Brother-ish, but I'm going to let it go.
Yeah. What we found, of course, Wilmington, people from Wilmington were number one. Guess number two?
Washington, D.C.
Raleigh. And then number three?
Washington, D.C.
Ohio.
Seriously? Ohio?
Ohio.
I would never have said Ohio.
Yeah. So I'm, as I think that because of my background in journalism, you got to show me facts and figures. And so I'm really on that type of thing. Some other statistics that came out of that study was that the arts employ 2,076 full-time equivalent employees in New Hanover County. And we also, as a result of these expenditures at hotels and Ubers and those types of things, generated $5.8 million for city and state tax coffers.
Right. Still just in the nonprofit part
just
of the
in the
arts.
Nonprofit.
Right.
Yeah,
okay.
Right.
Wow. Okay. Taking that a step back, so this is all sort of big picture. You sound like you made some amazing like connections state, nationwide, big organizations and all that. How does that end up helping, like, let's say, an artist living in the New Hanover County area? I know you have grants. So, like, what are how big are the grants? How hard are they? How competitive are they? I'm big on grants and residencies because I think they're the greatest asset that help individual artists. Mm-hmm. But I'm not sure that they do enough. Like they're the residency, there's so many residencies that offer like, oh, you can come and stay at our place, but you have to pay for your own travel and you have to pay for your own artist supplies. So like, that's not really a benefit. That's just a vacation that you have to pay for. And grants, I find a lot of grants take so much time and energy to prepare the grant, research the grant, then to write the receipts and the reports and all that kind of stuff that sometimes if the amount of money isn't a certain amount, it's almost not worth the effort.
So we administer several grants. One of them is the Grassroots Arts Program grant. We are the designated county partner to the North Carolina Arts Council. And so there we give out about $50,000 a year. In fact, that's what you see, these envelopes all over the place. We just had a deadline for the Grassroots grants. So North Carolina has probably one of the most extensive networks of local arts agencies, which are arts councils, in the country. And they have a per capita formula for getting arts funding out across the 100 counties in North Carolina. And so our grants from them generally are $50,000 to $60,000, depending upon the year. And we are allowed to keep 50% of that. We have not. We've seeded out every bit of it because there are just so few grant opportunities here that we thought was really important to just get that money out to help as many organizations as we can. And it also helps us, relieves us of the burden of having to do programming. We don't need to be programming on that level. We don't need to compete with all of these other organizations. I can't put on a better play. I can't put on a better dance. So this is part of our footprint here in southeastern North Carolina. So $50,000 to Grassroots. Another grant that I administer.
Okay, but wait, $50,000 to Grassroots. So how many grants do you give out? So like, what's the amount to sort of average amount per person or organization?
Per organization is generally $2,500 to about $5,000.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Not chump change, but it's generally we seed about 20 organizations each year. Mm-hmm. Another grant that we administer is what had been called the Regional Artist Project Grant, which was intended to award exceptional artists by funding a project pivotal to their advancement in their field. That grant we administer for New Hanover, Pender, Brunswick, Columbus, and now Bladen counties. So generally we give out about $15,000 a year. Now, in light of COVID, the state has chipped in a little extra money, and so we'll be giving out $25,000. And so 25 artists will likely get $1,000. All of this is going to happen within the next couple of weeks. We've also partnered with the Wilson Center on a number of grant programs, one called Broadway for a Better World. This is when we had Broadway at the Wilson Center, allowing free of charge tickets, giving free of charge tickets to underserved populations, primarily youth, but also senior groups, those dealing with disability challenges, those types of things. When COVID first hit, we administered another grant through the Wilson Center called the Ghost Light series, where we actually produced a series, put it on the internet, and allowed people to make donations. And we were able to give, about 40 artists $150 a piece. Because one of the things that you have to remember with COVID is that arts organizations were the first to close and will likely be the last to reopen, And so we knew that, when you got that call or that email or so in the middle of March saying, okay, your gig is done this weekend, that people, because this was, the arts are really the backbone of the gig economy, that the light bill that was due next week, probably couldn't be paid. And so it wasn't a large grant, but we wanted to do what we could to help people. And so I'm also, I have a Zoom at 2:00 this afternoon with the North Carolina Arts Council. As a result of our work, Arts North Carolina's work in advocating, we got $9.4 million in CARES Act funding specifically for the arts. And so we'll find out later this afternoon how that's going to be divvied up. It's likely that we will have anywhere in New Hanover County from $250,000 to $300,000 that we'll be able to give.
CARES Act, that's the stimulus money?
Right.
Okay.
Right. And heretofore, many arts organizations had been exempt from, excluded from that funding formula. In fact,
I just love the fact that you said heretofore.
I wax poetic every now and again.
I have never heard somebody say that. I've read that many times, but I've never heard somebody say that. That's hilarious. Go on.
Yeah. And so, arts organizations are really hurting, and particularly those who have facilities that have to be maintained. Mm-hmm. My rent didn't stop. It didn't go down as a result of, COVID. And so here we are 6 months later.
Well, and artists and their studios that they might be renting sort of outside their homes and this kind of stuff. I mean, everybody's affected by this, but it's the question of how can we move forward after this? I mean, right now, I feel like there's just this huge cultural shift going on between COVID, Donald Trump and all the stupid rhetoric that he's throwing around, and then the whole uprising with the racist issues that are being sort of brought back to the forefront again. There's so much going on simultaneously. How are we going to come out of this?
We will come out of it. This country's had a history with the pandemic before, and just as I was talking with someone yesterday, she said, the arts did fine after 1918, and that pandemic, they flourished. And so I think we're going to be fine. I think we're going to have to lead the charge because we are such an economic engine in the country. I mean, the arts represent 4.2% of the GDP. That's more than tourism, that's more than transportation, that's more than utilities, we just outpace many other industries, sectors that don't have nearly as hard a time trying to get funding to do what they do.
That's the thing is even though there is so much money in the arts and so much support from those who do support it. So I'm not even concerned about the people that don't currently support it. So the people who do support it, and yet we're still having to beg and borrow and steal to try and fund and move forward with it. So it's not even just maintain, but it's to make something better, to create new. It's still a struggle. You would think in all places, like in America and Europe, like these things would not be such a struggle, but they really, I feel like we're constantly battling just for survival, much less for getting better.
Yeah. So I think that a lot of it is due to the notion of voluntary patronage, where, if I want to support that, I will. And if I don't want to support it, I won't, instead of looking at the big picture. But I think that really visionary leaders see the big picture. They see the impact that it has not only on the ROI, as we talked of earlier, but also on a community's health. So I really don't know how to ask that question again.
Let me try it in a different way. Yeah, my wife is an accountant, by the way, so ROI, totally get it. When it comes to other businesses, let's say, they're often they might be competitive, but they're all working sort of towards the same goal. So I'm thinking, a drug company, that every drug company wants to sell drugs, and they all want to sell drugs. So they're all sort of on the same page of what the result they want is. In the arts, I feel like we're so segmented in so many ways. Like theatrical people want this, versus they want people sitting in the seats to see their performances, whereas visual artists want to sell art and have exhibitions, whereas musicians want to have more venues and be able to sell their music better through streaming services. I mean, there's no consistency in, like, it's almost like the arts is too big a word and too broad an umbrella to be able to truly be supportive of all the individual needs of the people that fall under it.
Well, you are correct that every genre has its wish list, if you will. But I think that one of my strengths has been fostering these collaborations. We, have some very unlikely bedfellows. So the Arts Council is the lead agency for the development of the Wilmington Rail Trail, the underutilized rail bed that runs up the north side of town.
Yeah, I know it. Kudzu covered.
Right. We are trying to forge those relationships. We along with Wilmington Downtown Inc. and the Downtown Business Alliance came together with funding to look at a route realignment study for wave transit. Our interest, of course, was getting patrons around to the 4 creative districts in the downtown area. And so, we, as a result of that work, were able to get a brand new trolley. And what does an arts organization, an arts council have to do with public transportation, some would say?
To me, from the way you're expressing it, like, I totally understand it. I think that's a really good question, is sort of, what is your definition of what an arts council's role is in a community?
Yeah. So our mission is to support artists and arts organizations through innovative public-private partnerships that support jobs, stimulate commerce, and showcase the region as an arts destination. And we're firing on all cylinders. But, I realized very early on is that we have to we can't be a silo. We can't be over here, we're the artsy ones, and the rest of life goes on, and we are not integrated with that, any other part of our, community.
Well, and that's the tradition, artists like segment themselves away. They go and rehearse in these little rehearsal spaces, or they go into their studios and they work privately. And then once they're done with their thing, they just present it and go, ta-da, you should now love what I've produced. But that's not how it needs to work these days. And that part of this is, there are new things that have to happen. Social media is a great one. These kinds of things that we're slow to evolve and slow to accept and slow to embrace, like the investment in a new trolley to ferry patrons around to the locations where events are going on. That's an important infrastructure element that most people in the arts don't understand why that's important.
So whenever they offer a seat at the table to talk about the arts and how we can become better integrated into the community, I am there. for sure. And you have to take advantage of these opportunities. First, you have to recognize those opportunities and see where you might fit in and your constituency might benefit from your being at this table. I didn't know, 2 years ago that I was going to be leading a park effort. I mean, who knew? But I, remained open to the possibility. We were looking for other places to put pedestrian art. And that area came up and I said, well, we don't own it. I said, but I do know who I can talk to. So we went to council and council gave us their blessings. We were able to come up with a $10,000 match that released $40,000 in federal funds for the creation of a master plan for this park, because I didn't want to do the master plan for the park. And so now we've got a park coming up. It's going to be a pedestrian plaza with cultural and recreational amenities that is going to be a nice connector to this largely residential community that has no pedestrian access into downtown Wilmington unless they're crossing 3rd Street, which is a major highway.
Absolutely. I mean, that's one other thing that I keep, like every city I go to, I don't care, small town, big city, whatever it is, the arts is everywhere. I mean, in some ways, it's really great that no matter sort of what neighborhood you're in a city, you can generally find something artistic or creative. But in some ways, it's really annoying. Like, I would love it, though I guess it's probably not, it wouldn't work. But I would love it if like all the arts would sort of come to a neighborhood. So like you could literally just go to a neighborhood and it's the arts neighborhood. Like it would be great. But probably economically, it's probably not a good idea, is it?
Yeah, well, and Wilmington is so far flung these days, and you've got these little pockets. I'd say all the time that the arts here have to compete with a couple of things. One of them is weather.
And the beach.
And the beach, because people have such laid back lifestyles, so if you're going, home to your house out on the marina or on the ocean.
Yeah, it would take a lot to get you to leave that to come somewhere down and do something.
This is what our biggest challenge is.
It's interesting. I was having a conversation just last night with some artists, and they were saying like visual artists. So they were saying, how can you get into, because in every city there's like a rich neighborhood, and it's very hard for artists to get into that community in some way, be accepted by them or patroned by them or whatever. And like we came up with, the best way is for visual artists was to contact interior designers. And then the interior designers would basically then encourage the people to put artworks into their homes that they would not naturally have thought of themselves. So, I mean, a lot of it's not just like making a good product, but it's also then connecting to other people who can take that product and put it in the right place.
Right. So, to that point, the Landfall Foundation, that's primarily how they raise funds for their grant program, is through the Landfall Art Show, which is a huge show, and they raise tons of money in a very lucrative community. These people are going out there buying the art. It's wonderful. And then the Landfall Foundation, of course, puts this money back out into the community. It's wonderful. It's just absolutely wonderful. Now, we also run the Fourth Friday Gallery Nights. And so we have had to suspend it through 2020, of course. And we started out when the galleries approached me right after we reestablished the Arts Council. There were 8 galleries. We are now up to about 20. Right here in the downtown area, not far flung, right here in the downtown area. And it's been wonderful. So in here, and we're probably the smallest of the galleries. This is called ACES Gallery, which stands for Arts Council Exhibition Space. Anywhere on the 4th Friday of each month between 6 and 9, we have minimally 300 people that come through here, which is why we had to cancel it. There's no way we can have those kinds of numbers in here anymore for the foreseeable future. So, and I was very intentional about it. We were granted space in the manse of the Brooklyn Art Center. Our office was there initially, and I was like, this is nice, but first of all, we don't want to be so tied in with, one arts organization that they think that, we're just a department of the Brooklyn Art Center. We are not. So if we are serious about positing the arts as an economic engine, then we need to be right in the heart of downtown Wilmington, and we need to be, as near to our downtown economic development agency, Wilmington Downtown Inc. It was part of the positioning of the arts. not going hat in hand, but saying we are a viable industry here, and we need to be recognized as such.
All right. So moving forward, from your experiences, what's some advice you can give to either a young arts organization or a young artist that's looking to expand and sort of try to sort of lead their journey in a more positive and successful manner?
When I look back at the early days of the Black Arts Alliance and the North Carolina Film Festival, I think one of the strengths was the fact that we did not encumber ourselves with a lot of debt early on. If you have, for example, the film festival that, runs 4 days out of a year, why do you have to have a place year round? And can you put that money to better use by actually funding a project or doing something like that? So I would say be very, very careful early on. And it's wonderful to be able to scale up, but you can't scale up if you're not around because you've exhausted all your resources very early on. So that's one of the things that I would say. And I can't stress that enough. I think that too many times, we have the best of intentions. We're going to do this, we're going to do that. It's usually going to boil down to 2 or 3 people actually doing the work. And then we know that historically we've been underfunded. So, let's find out where those dollars are going to come from and run it like a business.
I made those mistakes with some of the nonprofits I ran here in Wilmington years ago. Like I overextended and things just didn't work out for whatever reason. And sometimes it takes a little bit of make a mistake to learn from your own mistake, but sometimes you do have to remember to listen to the people who have done things like whatever you're trying to do before, because they already know the mistakes and they've already learned, and they can give you the wisdom to help you to avoid these things, which I, in my youthful arrogance, did not listen to and wish I had. So, yeah.
The other thing I would say to organizations is that it's really imperative that you surround yourself with a great board.
Absolutely. My biggest problem was I never got a good board. I didn't even understand the benefit of a good board until nearing the end. And I suddenly was like, oh, that's what a good board of a nonprofit should be actively working for you, not just sitting on the board, not just being a figurehead, whatever, but they should be talking you up and doing things on their own time and energy to support the programs and all this. And I didn't do that. And I was really bad at it. But yeah, boards are something that are very, very overlooked.
And that is, it's great to have a great executive leadership, but it is the board who is really tasked with helping to carry that mission forward. And you're right, they have to be out there doing the ask. They have to invite you into their circle of friends in order to grow your organization. And, I tell people, or I tell this present board now, you are the board I've always deserved. Because they are on it, They are on it with fundraising and with great ideas. And they're not trying to be the programming arm of the organization, but realizing that if the organization has to exist in order for us to do anything. So make certain that we have the resources to be in place to carry forth this mission.
All right. So moving forward, sort of trying to wrap this up at this point. So moving forward, between your work with racial issues, between your work with working in a small southern town, trying to make it be more progressive, more forward thinking, what are some of the things that you are sort of striving to do, hoping to do? What's the prospects for the future in your vision?
So again, we have many major projects. First of all, let me say this. Our vision now is a lot different than it was 6 months ago. So our mission now is to ensure that our arts organizations are stabilized so that when we come out of this and have increased capacity and can get some audiences approximating what we had before, a lot of organizations are going to need help with that. Now, it's true that we do have some smaller organizations that for them, it was just a matter of contracting. Okay, So we can't meet, so we just shut down until we can meet again. But then you have other organizations that have physical spaces that still have to be maintained. The lights have to be paid, the phone bill has to be paid, the rent has to be paid. And so helping to stabilize those organizations is our mission for the next year or so. I would say through 2021, making certain that our arts organizations are in a position to reopen in whatever capacity lawmakers decide they can open, because we have a graduated tier system. We're at 2.5 now in terms of reopening. You've heard of this.
Yeah, I mean, because it's hard because generally arts organizations and arts in general, they don't have savings. They don't have bank accounts to say like to plan for, oh, if we have a downturn, whatever, but, much like businesses generally do, like a for-profit business oftentimes will have said, okay, let's put away some savings in case we have a difficult 3 months, 6 months, whatever. But arts organizations work on such a razor thin, profit margin that they don't have that savings. They don't have that cushion to be able to go, okay, well, we can just hold on for a little while. Like we don't think like that. Like that's not our mindset. And that's where, like you said earlier, artists and the arts organizations need to think more like businesses.
Right. Though I'm really surprised at businesses. I mean, look at how many have closed. They couldn't go 3 or 6 months without,
It's true.
business as usual.
It's true.
They couldn't do it. I mean, look at how mass closings of these retail operations that have been, venerated brands that have been around for decades. And this happened and
it is surprising. I mean, across the board, but it sort of shows like who did better planning, basically. Like I think it's funny. Like what I've been thinking a lot about is I grew up in the generation of more or less in the 80s, let's say, was my sort of formative years. And so like I grew up in the decadence and the craziness and the cocaine and the shoulder pads, all the crazy stuff. And this generation, how is this experience going to affect them as they go on? So like, how is the arts going to be affected? Because like we're running out of TV shows to watch. We're running out of movies to watch because nobody's been able to produce new ones. And so like, it's going to be a very interesting time moving forward as far as production of and support of the arts in the next generation because of this experience. And I have no idea what that's going to look like. And it sort of scares me a little bit.
It scares me too. And I think it's compounded by the fact that, as I mentioned earlier, I think that there's going to be, and there is already, a devaluing of the art, because you can get anything online. I mean, you've got Met performances, you've got Broadway, you've got anything you want online. But I'm hopeful that the live experience will continue to be the calling card for the arts. We have to kind of shift our model for what success looks like. It used to be packing a house and we had no problems doing that. But now that we have these challenges, because what I've heard and seen in terms of research is that 65% of people think that attending a performance is too risky. So that number is going to have to come way down before we, approximate any sense of normalcy. Mm-hmm. It's going to have to come way down.
Well, I mean, like even just advancements in technology have helped and hindered a lot of the arts. Like I'm a photographer, so like my background is creating photographs, hanging them on the wall and selling them. Well, these days, a lot of people don't like buying them because they can just download them, or they can just look at my website and get a good sense of the work, and they don't feel the need to go to an exhibition or even purchase the works because, well, they can see it on their computers or their phones. And same thing with social media. Like, of course, you and I both grew up not in the generation of social media. And so like the whole evolution of how art is experienced, I see more process videos of people making art than necessarily like completed beautiful art. And so that engagement of the process is becoming much more interesting to the general public than necessarily the final result, which is a huge shift.
That's a great point.
That is not at all how I grew up. Like I grew up that I hide in my studio and I do my process and nobody gets to see me doing it because I'm going to screw up a lot and I don't want to see you messing everything up. But when I get it right, I'll show you my correct thing. But now they want to see that. Like that the more successful artists oftentimes are showing their mistakes and their flubs and their, whatever, the behind the scenes stuff, because it makes them more relatable. And that's something that's
It
new.
humanizes them.
It does. I mean, because we as artists have been like off in our ivory towers, very elite, away from the masses. But the social media has encouraged us to be more vulnerable and show our mistakes and be more human in a public way that traditionally artists, performers, all these people didn't do. They only put out their album when it was done, or their theatrical performance once it was perfected, or their piece of art once it was, completed to their satisfaction. But now it's very much about who you are and your acts and your processes and your techniques. And this is a shift that's very interesting.
It is. I think it is the social media and COVID.
Oh, absolutely.
Where we are looking for human connection in any way we can. And if you mess up, well, then, that makes you even more human.
Which is so the opposite of everything we grew up with. Like, all the people I venerated in the arts were perfect. Like, you only saw their perfect outfit, thing, their perfect, their fabulous performance, their incredible album, their finished art on the wall. But now it's less about that.
Yeah, show me your bloopers.
Pretty much. Like, and I don't want to show my bloopers. I know I'm not of the generation of this, but like, I don't want to show my bloopers. Like, I want to show the good stuff, the finished stuff, the stuff I feel proud of, that I want to put my name associated to. But that's not what they want anymore. Yeah. And it's fascinating. Yeah.
People are looking for an authentic experience.
I know. That's hard. But that's what this conversation is. So that's what we're trying to do anyways.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, okay, but social media, we didn't really touch on that. How does an arts council use social media? How do you see it as a benefit, or how do you assist others in using social media well?
So we produce a weekly newsletter that is very graphic in nature. So wait,
an email newsletter?
Mm-hmm.
Do you actually find those work still?
Oh, yeah.
Really? Okay, because I
just sent out one yesterday asking for people to respond to a survey about the Wilmington Rail Trail, and 700 responses instantly.
Wow. Okay.
Instantly.
I'm not a fan of those. I don't like receiving them, so I don't want to send them.
Mm-hmm.
This kind of thing.
Yeah,
but people
so
do
it's
still.
Not just for the Arts Council. So we do it for all of the organizations. And in fact, when we finish, I'm just going to show you a few videos that I wanted to share with you about some of the projects that we're involved in, and I'll show you the newsletter as well, and you get to see what
I actually receive your newsletter.
Okay.
Still, and 12 years later.
So you click the link and you go straight to that organization's website, or, response form or what have you. People love that. And especially here where, we have an aging demographic. They want something big and bold. So that's why I said, no, we're going to put in the posters. We're not going to have a whole lot of text. And we're going to put direct links. And the organizations love it. You let one of them miss out on an opportunity to get in because they didn't send stuff on time, which is, a problem sometimes. Boy, do we hear about it. Because they want to get in front of the audience that we've culled over the past 8 years.
Mm-hmm. What about so what about like Facebook and Instagram and Twitter? Do you use them?
Yes, we do. Facebook and Twitter primarily. Instagram, I was told by a social media specialist years ago, pick one or two. I mean, you can't be everything to every social media platform.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so Facebook, we keep up with, and we also have like a hoop. We're part of a hoop suite so that it also populates our Twitter. The same thing that we post to Facebook, post to Twitter.
Oh, yeah. That's that software that you can use, so you can schedule things in advance and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but it just automatically, when I put it into Eye Contact, which is our e-newsletter platform, mm-hmm. It populates that. And it's supposed to do LinkedIn too, but
Who cares about LinkedIn? It's fine.
But we do stick to Facebook and Twitter primarily. Okay. And those newsletters are going into emails, which is different than our social media platform. We have about maybe not quite 3,000 people on Facebook, only because I can't be all things to all people.
Well, but the Wilmington arts community is only so big, and there are going to be only so many people that are engaged in it. I mean, it's different. Like if you were part of the Raleigh, I mean, just by demographics, Raleigh is simply a larger city. Wilmington is only so big. I mean, there's only like I had an email list back when I ran a nonprofit, and it was ridiculous. I made it way too big and way too vague. And like one thing I found about those kinds of things was having fewer, higher quality people on your email list is more beneficial than having a volume of people that don't engage.
Yeah.
So numbers on that kind of thing is more about transactional numbers than like a quantity number. Like you want a good amount of people engaging so that you know that the people that are receiving it actually care.
And I'm glad to be able to get the analytics on the back end that show, I looked up, I said, well, I want to see about, the rail trail, how it performed, because even before it hit, we sent out ours, we had 1,100 responses. And this is just based on a video that the mayor and another councilman and I did a couple weeks ago. 1,100 just off the bat, just using Facebook.
It's very good.
And so the other 700 that have come in since, we sent just our direct newsletter is just, and we see numbers like this each week. So people are really looking for this. And we always put the Arts Council events up at the top. So if we got, our grants programs, we just finished commissioning $250,000 in public art for the airport. So any of the opportunities that we have are up at the top. And then we have, the visual arts, the performing arts, the film, that type of thing. And so people, they're using it.
It's great. All right. Last thing, literally, I know I said last question before, but this is actually the last question. Okay. So the future, so with you, because I'm interested in the background of the racial issues and things like this, also like, and because I feel like Wilmington is still very racist and very segregated, and I wish that it wasn't. And I want to know what would you like, or how would you like to see the future happening as far as the issues of the arts and race in the Wilmington, New Hanover area?
So going back to my days as a news director, it was in 2015. Anyway, it was the mid-census period. And it showed a precipitous drop in the number of African Americans who were here. And why was that? It was because our kids were moving to Raleigh and Charlotte and some of these other places with jobs.
The brain drain.
The brain drain.
Yeah.
We had that because Wilmington is still a service-based economy. So if you have aspirations to be anything other than in the service industry, then you've got to go someplace else. And that was particularly true for African Americans, where I think said 20%, don't quote me here, but anyway, it was a precipitous drop in the number of those 18 to 34. They are the ones that are most likely to be engaged and in your community, and they're not here. So what we have to do is to keep making the case for economic development that is going to attract them back to this area. If not, then I think we may have forever lost them to the Raleighs and the Charlottes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's even true for any artist as well, because I mean, there's not a huge market necessarily for doing what you as an artist, creating and selling. But on the other hand, artists like visual artists in particular in this case can live anywhere and just ship it with DHL or FedEx or anything. But when it comes to like performing artists, like they still have to be where the patrons are, and if they're not here, they kind of have to go there.
Right.
And also, like you could say, where the education is. So no knock on any of the education in the New Hanover County, but like if there's better education elsewhere, people are going to go where they can get the education they desire.
For sure. But the reason I bring up the economic development agencies is that they are the ones that are tasked with bringing in business and industry. And you see all of these, high dollar developments, housing developments, and I keep wondering, where are the jobs to support?
It's retirees. I mean, this region it attracts them. I mean, it's beautiful for retirees, but you're right. There's not a lot of businesses that will attract that younger generation
Right.
that need to be here in order to create a strong, young, vibrant arts community.
Exactly. And when your top 5 industries are, your city, your county, your hospital, and Walmart, what do you expect?
Indeed.
I sat on a committee for the hospital because they were trying to find ways to attract Black physicians, believing that Black physicians would have an impact on the Black community.
I actually recently heard a study that does.
Yes.
Like if your doctor is the same race/gender as the patient, that they will have more trust and faith in them
And better outcomes.
Yeah, of course, and then the results of that are better. So it's interesting that bias towards basically similar, like they'll trust people of like, so white on white, black on black, Hispanic on Hispanic, whatever. But I thought that was an interesting study. So yeah, I mean, you're getting the equal percentage of availabilities. I mean, whether that's in medical or the arts, it's like, so everything should be percentage wise equal. So the population percentage of whatever ethnicity people are, there should be that same percentage of experiences available in the arts.
Yeah.
But they're not.
Yeah. And right after the protests started, after George's murder, I can't tell you how many of my friends who I really love, but they were reaching out saying, okay, well, how did this happen? How do we, move past this point? And it's just so belated and so deep that, I can't give you an answer.
Well, but it's not move past. That's my problem is like, I don't feel like we should move past this. We need to deal with this. We need to make changes, not just move past. I feel like move past is what we've done for centuries.
Mm-hmm.
So like now we need to do something about it and
Exactly.
change something, not move past. So that's a little vocabulary thing that I'm like, yeah, but that's how it's always been done. And how it's always been done is not necessarily the right way.
I would agree with you wholeheartedly. And my response to them is like, think of any restaurant that you've gone to in Wilmington anytime in the past month and tell me how many Black people you saw working there, either in the front of the house or even in the kitchen. How many? And we know that restaurant work is generally the way we cut our teeth, and get some valuable work experience. And you've got a whole class that has been shut out of that most seminal experience.
Okay, wait, just to clarify. So you're saying that currently under COVID, there are less minority workers or more in restaurants?
Less. Well, here in Wilmington, my point was that there were none.
Oh, okay.
I mean, you can go to any restaurant here and you don't have any Black front of house and very few in the kitchen. But I mean, I think that has been a trend. It's always been that way. And so if you've got young Black people who have been shut out of the most basic job experience that you can get for whatever reason, their own or, systemically, what do you expect?
It's interesting. So you're saying because of the COVID situation.
Take COVID out.
Okay. So it's not.
Yeah, I was just saying, just think about where you've been anytime recently.
Interesting.
But, it's predates COVID.
Okay. I haven't been here. So,
Yeah.
I'm trying to be educated. That's sort of the point here. Okay. So there are less opportunities at the entry level. Okay. That's news to me.
And so when you have Black tourists that come to town and they go into restaurants and it's, all white.
Well, that's the thing is it, yeah, I might cut this part out, but I feel like part of it is like politics. I feel like the Americas has become more racially divided under Trump. And then that's trickling down into businesses saying, I'm going to make my political stance by who I choose to hire to be in my company or my business. And so therefore they're becoming more segregated and more nationalistic or
emboldened
to express what traditionally is. I'm a liberal. So like, to me, I find it all horribly inappropriate and just wrong. But I feel like because of Trump, it has allowed them, I think emboldened is the best word for it. They feel emboldened to become almost more racist or more separatist or nationalist, whatever words you want to put to it. And that's horrible. Like, that's a horrible state of affairs.
It is a horrible state of affairs. But even some of this predates Trump.
Does it?
Yes, it does. Because these people who are asking me, former board members and people who I really have a great deal of respect for, it just didn't occur to them.
Well, and that's the thing, is things, they don't think enough. Like, they should be thinking about these things. Like, I wish I didn't have to think about these things. It should just be obvious. But living outside the country and looking at America from as having been raised here, it's really kind of painful for me to see what you all are ripping yourselves apart, and nobody's going to win from this. Like, this is not a trajectory that's going to be helpful or optimistic or growth or any of these kinds of things. It's very much a nationalistic, separatist sensibility. And unfortunately, the arts is one of the things that gets affected dramatically by this, because just so many things. I don't even know where to take that.
But, I think it links back to social media, because I don't know that we would have even seen this much attention paid to any of it had it not been for cell phones and people being caught on camera doing these things.
Absolutely. I mean, this stuff...
It was happening all along.
That's right. This stuff has always been happening, but people didn't witness it. Now we're witnessing it. And so now it's affecting, hopefully affecting more change. But it doesn't seem to be. That's the thing that's killing me, is like, you're seeing all these horrible injustices that are occurring, but not changing anything. And I mean, like, just this morning or just yesterday, there was a thing in Kansas or wherever it was that they're not charging the police officers. Like, come on. Like, seriously, you're not charging the police officers? That's ridiculous. You've got to. I mean, they did illegal things. They killed people. Like, I don't even care about race or whatever, but like, you kill people, you have to pay the price for that. Like, that's justice. But it's not happening. And it's not getting better. Like, I feel like it should be getting better, and it's getting worse.
Well, I don't think that you can watch the video of somebody kneeing someone in the neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds and not be affected on some level. And so, what would that change look like?
Well, that's the question. So that's the question for you. So, like, because I feel like it's not my place to decide or even come up with ideas of change, because I'm, as much as I don't like saying this, like, I'm of the oppressive part. Like, I'm the white guy. So like, I want to hear what people on the other side, so it's not just black, but any minority. So like, I don't care, Mexicans, whatever, Filipinos, I don't care. What should be done? What do we need to do? I'd like to keep it closer to the arts, but in general racism, like, what should we do? I don't know. And I don't feel it's my place to decide or make any recommendations. I think it's your place to try and say, like, okay, let's do a little bit more of this. Let's try a little bit of that. What do we need to do?
I think that you can't absolve yourself of the need to put something out there, because, I say all the time, don't hold me up as, the bastion of righteousness, because I've had privileges that many people don't have.
And I haven't had privileges that many other people have.
Yeah, but I think it's incumbent upon all of us. I mean, you can't say, because I'm a white guy, this is not my issue. It's not my problem to come up with the solution to this. It is all of our.
Okay, I get that. So more dialogue.
Yeah, but I'm sick of talking.
That's what I'm getting at, is like, what can be done to make a change? Like what? I know it's not going to be big. I know it's not going to be some sort of stupid legislative thing. It's not going to be political. It's going to be small acts that are going to slowly make little changes, and then they're going to grow and all that. So what are some small acts? Try again, like, to keep it with the arts, but like, what are some small acts to try to break this cycle that we can do to move not just racism issues, no matter what the race, and the arts forward?
I think it goes back to what we started with, and that is funding early experiences, making it equitable, that everybody has exposure to the wonderful arts experiences that are available not just in this community, but across this country, and making it okay for people to express themselves through these various genres. But again, you're not going to, all of a sudden become an adult and become a muralist. You have to have had exposure to it, gained appreciation, and most definitely have some sort of experience with something early on.
And that's hard sometimes because the teachers are often older and not as progressive. The parents are, of course, of a previous generation and not necessarily as progressive. So it feels like it's something that has to be almost forced into the system to make them include this stuff, even though the people actively do, like, the teachers and the parents of these children may not think this way. Somehow it needs to be implemented into their lives to make this change happen, instead of hope it will, or just plan for it, or try this, because I don't think it's going to happen that way, that easily.
Yeah. And, I think that if some of what we've seen already has not turned our hearts, then no amount of legislation or anything else is going to help. And the arts have been really good at humanizing us and drawing us together to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's how it happens, but I don't know. And I'm not without hope, but I think it's going to be people coming at life with heart, and that informing the art and culture of communities, which in turn informs the art and culture of our country. I don't know what else to say.
And I didn't actually expect you to have an answer.
Thank you.
Yeah, no. This was just your perspective.
Yeah, if people don't have it in their hearts to do good and to do right by people and to afford everybody human decency and human kindness, if it's not in you, then how? How do you do that?
I have no idea. That's my question. I don't know.
I don't either. And I've been thinking long and hard, and I'm hopeful that the session that we're convening on diversity, equity, and inclusion will help me to start thinking of things that I hadn't thought of, because I don't think of everything in terms of race. I just never have. And that's why I don't want to be held up as the role model for, the Black community and all, because my experience has been so great. I have been at these tables. I have done what I could do. And so I'm not going to be the woe is me, poor Black person who, just can't get no justice nowhere. It's just not going to be me.
Yes, I would never equate that to you.
And not that I'm ignorant of what's going on, but I also take it in limited doses. I know that it vexes my spirit.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I just wanted to have a discussion about this, though the reality is I know the two of us sitting in this room are never going to come up with a resolution to this.
I mean, and these conversations are taking place across the country, across the community.
Across the world.
Across the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, as they should be. My mother had a saying, it's a time in the land And it's a time in the land, for sure.
It is.
You know, the belated racial reckoning, COVID, hurricanes, earthquakes. I mean, we've got it all going on right now. And it really, if it doesn't force us to look within and say, am I being the best version of myself? Then no amount of social justice or arts experience is going to change that.
I agree. Yeah. Yeah. All right. I've taken up enough of your time. Thank you very much for this.
Thank you. And I really wish that I hadn't been all over the place, but these are weighty questions, and I'll be thinking about them for sure.
Me too.